Morning, everybody.
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Hey, guys.
Good morning, everybody. We are already recording, but we are still seeing some people come in. Due to security changes for the PUC regarding Zoom accounts, we no longer have a chat, so I'm unable to put the sign-in into chat. But the sign-in is always at the task force website on the ESInet users group committee page. So the button's at the top of that, and I did put the link on the screen in case you need it, but a quick Google search of 911 task force in Colorado should pop that website up for you. Also, offering the disclaimer that the only official record of this meeting will be the one that the commission produces and posts the recording on its official commission YouTube channel. And with that, I will turn it over to Steve.
Morning, everybody. Do we still have people coming in?
We do. It's
Okay.
slowing down a little bit.
Okay, I'll give about 30 seconds. With the third meeting of the week with the same group, there might be some stragglers. All right, good morning, everybody. I'll call this meeting to order as a net user group meeting for August 13th. We have a slightly updated agenda. that Tracy put a request in to modify so that she has the right folks on at the right time. So that's why you might see a little bit of a variation of the order of operations today. Again, reminder to sign in online. Just to repeat, if you just joined, Jennifer advised that they don't have a chat function anymore due to security reasons for limitations on the Zoom. But you can find the link online and in front of us with what she just highlighted in order to sign in for today's meeting. Thanks, Jennifer. All right, we will start right away going into number 3, which is a failover discussion, and kick it over to Tracy.
Awesome. Good morning, guys. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Yes,
Give me a
absolutely.
minute. I'm just fixing it so that I can let you share.
Okay.
Okay, you should be able to share.
You guys see a cute little diagram here? Service
Yes.
provider at the top left. Okay. But we'll go ahead and start this. This is the request from the users group last month, and it's gonna be a joint conversation. Kevin Newton with Lumen is gonna kick it off, and then I have a couple slides for Rich Johnson at Entrado as well. So Kevin, I do have your first slide up and ready to go.
I see that. So this is just a basic overview from left to right. I was asked to do this for Jackie as a single page high level overview. People call 911, it goes to a POI. I'm not getting hung up over acronyms and initials and stuff like that, but it goes to a router. Based on geographic location, it will direct it to the PSAP. It transverses over the ESInet IP network. Go ahead, hit next, Tracy.
Kevin, before we move on to next, Jackie does have her hand up. I wasn't sure
Oh,
if
I didn't see that.
That's okay, Kevin. I just want to apologize. I have some edits that I worked on with a couple people too.
On
That
this one,
first,
I can
on
do
the very
that.
first one, and I'll get them to you. I just wanted to let you
That
know
works for
that-
me.
I haven't gotten them to you yet.
I kind of edited this a little bit from in between. You had it too, so
Okay.
yeah, it's worked for today.
Okay, thank you.
I threw this slide in because this is what's in the tariff. So it goes from left to right. If you look at the right-hand side, the network upgrades are going from VPN-C and VPN-D on the right-hand side. And that's what we are replacing in the network, upgrading all of those to what's in the new circuits. Some PSAPs are on an LPG and some are direct SIP. I'm going to say most of them are on direct SIP in the state. I don't have the actual numbers, but I just want to emphasize, I just want to keep coming back to this diagram because this is what's in the tariff. And if you're familiar with that, nothing we're presenting challenges or changes what this is doing. So before I hand this off to Rich, are there any questions or anything that needs to be brought up? I didn't see Rich on here. Rich, are you on here?
He's on the phone.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm on the road driving cross country, so I apologize if I lose my network here. Kevin, do you actually mind going back 2 slides? And I'll just, from a high level, again, just to talk about where we are in Colorado. So where we are in Colorado today, and Kevin, keep me honest here, is that the carriers within Colorado connect to today a TDM aggregation point. That TDM aggregation point then sends it to a Lumen media gateway. So Lumen takes that TDM and converts that to IP. That call is then sent from the redundant diverse media gateway into the core infrastructure, that middle part, which is all of those core elements. A point of clarification is right now for Colorado, we are doing routing based on what we would call an IP selective router. So it's really set the foundation for Colorado to use all the next generation elements. But the routing decision today is being made all based on a TN and ESN relationship. So although we have all the reporting, the logging, the additional ultimate routing and feature functionality of the next gen system, we are currently doing IP ESN routing today. So ESN TN routing. Once that's sent out, there's multiple paths from the core infrastructure to the destination PSAP. So if you see here that each PSAP router will have a unique route to a different cloud on a different IP cloud on Lumen's side. So calls are handed off to the PSAP in that fashion. I just want to establish that before I move in to my portion of the presentation.
Sounds good to me. He's accurate.
Okay, great. I'm guessing you folks can still hear me, so I'll keep going. I'm running through New York right now. I think I have pretty good cell coverage. So, so really, there from an Intrado perspective, there's two types of failover that can occur with a call going to a PSAP. I'll talk about network failover first. So because we have real-time persistent connectivity to the PSAP for two different paths to two different routers. So we have a physical diversity there from a router perspective to the equipment that we put at the PSAP, as well as circuit diversity there. There are some areas in Colorado that are redundant versus, I believe I'm saying this correct, that are redundant today versus diverse. So we still have two separate circuits, but maybe it doesn't have full diversity, and that's what the Colorado Network Project is going through and solving some of that. But we do have two physical circuits into each PSAP, two physical routers into the PSAP. And what that means from a network perspective is that when we send a call through to a PSAP, we have multiple paths to get that call to the PSAP endpoint, the CPE. If one of those paths or a quick piece of equipment fails during a call, our network sees that and is able to use the network, because it keeps that persistent connection and keeps checking in both from a PSAP perspective and a core perspective that that route is available. It will redirect that voice and data traffic over the existing available. So one of our call tests when we do it is actually, like when a call goes through, we'll pull a network connection as that call's up, and the network will see the alternate path to that endpoint IP address and redirect that call to that endpoint IP address. So we do have the network type of failover set up in our environment. The second type of failover is an application failover. So this is when, you know, we're constantly, there's a whole bunch of different scenarios for this, but some examples I put on the
Next page, Tracy.
Oh, no, keep it here. Sorry.
Okay,
Keep
all
it
right,
here
I'm
for
sorry.
now. That's okay. So the application failover, that second part, is if we know that a route is down, let's say it occurs because we keep constant communication between the PSAP and the core and the PSAP. So if we have a timeout scenario, then the network will error that back when we attempt to do that route. And if let's say both routes are in a failure state, then now we start looking at an application failure. We get an error from the network, then we can use our application to fail that over based on that error code that we receive from the network. Other things, we keep constant communication, heartbeat options messages between us and the PSAP CPE equipment. If that fails, then we take that out of service while we continually try to reconnect. We will take that out of service. If both routes to the PSAP fail, then that entire PSAP is then out of service from a network perspective, and we'll go into our alternate routing. If a CPE times out, if we attempt to send a call to a PSAP and we get an initial response, but we don't get a ringing type of SIP response, then we will fail over to an alternate route. if a CPE responds with an error, and this can be in a normal environment. So if a CPE is set up to only accept a certain amount of calls, and let's say that's 10 calls, if we go to send the 11th, the CPE can make a decision to either put that in a queue somewhere and keep it, or they can send back a busy. If we get a busy from both of our attempts to that PSEP, then we will use our application failover to go to an alternate route. And then another one is a ring no answer timer. This is something we set up for every PSEP when we're deploying it. So if we send a call out to a PSEP, we get the initial response saying I received it, and we get the ringing response. But if we don't get a pickup response, which in the SIP world is a 200 OK, we can then fail over to an alternate route. And that ring no answer timer is configurable. So that's part of what we do when we turn the up is we say what's an acceptable amount of time that you want to have a call ringing on your call handling system before we fail it over. We determine that, and then that's provisioned in our system. Go to the next slide. I'll pause for a second. Any questions on what I've presented so far? Okay. So these are the application failover options. So typically we'll set up an alternate PSEP route, or we will set up an alternate PSEP route list with you. That's during the time of implementation. Those routes can be changed or reprioritized at any point. If you want, then you would contact Lumen. Lumen would open a ticket with Intrado. We would go ahead and either add new routes or reprioritize existing routes. Right now, the way they occur are either typically they're hierarchical. I think I said that right. So it goes from, if PSEP A is busy, it'll go to PSEP B. Then if PSEP B is busy, it'll go to PSEP C. If PSEP C is busy, it'll go to PSEP D. We can load balance, so we can load balance across multiple PSEPs, which is good if you have a large PSEP going to multiple small PSEPs. Some of we can also send to PSTN lines. That is a common practice. Like if a PSEP CPE goes down, they may want to send it across a PSTN line that's actually answered by the same Viper. So in that case, if they're worried about the network and the network goes down, they could still handle a PSTN call into their CPE. There is a risk with PSTN. It is the final route. So because PSTN, once we send it out to the infrastructure, it either gets answered or it doesn't. There isn't an error scenario or a SIP scenario. So if we choose to do a PSTN, it's typically the last route that the PSEP will have. So what we see in a lot of cases is that the PSEP will have an alternate PSEP be a failover, and then maybe another alternate PSEP, and neither of those work. It'll go to like a PBX not associated to directly to the CPE in case the CPE does go down. That will be answered somewhere. But all of those are options. With I3, which is, we're in communication now of putting that on the tariff, I think relatively soon. I3, we get a whole bunch of new options. One of them being alternate routing based on geography. So in that case, if you had a big PSEP and you wanted the eastern portion to go to one PSEP, the southern portion to go to another, and the rest of it to go to a third, we can now build with I3, we can build shapes for each of those scenarios, and we can do something called a post-send PRF policy. So in our post-send policies, we can say, hey, if we attempt to go here, but then we get an error, what do we do? A lot of the stuff right now is pre-send, so we can make a decision of, okay, this is a wireless call, we want to treat it a different way, or this is an abandonment PSEP. We know that before. Abandonments are purposely turned on so we can have different alternate routing for abandonment PSEPs. With our new configurations and with I3, we can do post-send policy routing functions, which allows us to, hey, we tried this, that didn't work, what do you want to do with it next? And we've also built in our system the ability to create different layers for unique alternate routing scenarios as well. So with I3 here in the next year or so, when we get it all in the tariff, and we can start to turn it up, we'll have additional alternate routing capabilities from an application perspective. I'll stop. That's pretty much all I had prepared, but I'll answer questions if anyone has them.
Thanks, Rich. Were there any follow-up questions? I want to make sure we have Rich's connectivity since he's driving before we let him go. Steve, it sounds like maybe we're okay on this topic then. Do you guys have anything you want us to follow up on, or did we answer what you were looking for?
Tracy, I think silence is acceptance. If anybody has any follow-up questions, why don't you pass them on to myself and I'll facilitate that and make sure that Lumen has a chance to come back with the answers.
Awesome. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is
Thanks,
going to be
Chelsea. Sorry, I'll stay on as long as I can. If I go through a dead zone and I drop, it's because of me, not because
I
of the
appreciate
goal.
Yeah, let me glance real quick and make sure. I know Tim and Tressa or we're going to join. It looks like Tim is on, so we should be okay for the, I think it was network configurations conversation. This is another one that came up back in July, and we were asked to kind of circle back with the team this month and just discuss kind of the tariff and what it says and what the configurations mean. So I guess I can turn it over to Tim to see if you want to kick it off at a high level, or Steve Deloach. I know you've been a part of conversations with some specific PSAPs where there's additional charges that might be applicable.
This is Steve. Good morning. It's Tim Kuckerman. I think we was going to let Tim kind of talk about what's actually the
He's
language in the tariff. Tim, are you out there?
He was here.
So,
There you
I've heard kind of the issue. I know there was some inconsistencies with a couple folks, so that's our fault, and we're trying to rectify that. And I think that's why we're having this conversation. But what I think I'm trying to understand is what is the request from you all that we figure out a consistent charge? Is it that there should not be any charges? I guess I need a little bit more information on what the overall concern is, other than, we were having some inconsistencies, which we understand is a problem.
Hey, Tim, it's Jennifer.
Hey, Jennifer.
Just speaking from the PUC perspective, obviously, if there is work that needs to be done to connect any CHE to the ESInet, that's understandable. I think the challenge that we're seeing from the PUC perspective is that the project management charges that are being quoted to agencies are different for each agency, and there doesn't seem to be a consistency, and there also doesn't seem to be a lot of information coming from CenturyLink as to what the charges will cover and how many, like what's the charge per hour and how many hours and so on and so forth. So it would be helpful from the tariff perspective if CenturyLink would be willing to put the project management charges into the tariff to say going forward, if there is work that needs to be done beyond just normal connection of call handling equipment to the ESInet, then this would be the charge per hour and so on and so forth. Does that help?
Yeah. And so, we do have a project management charge in the tariff. And I think some of the issues were that, we weren't using that charge when we were doing some of this other work. So I think that we have the charge that's in the tariff and that we can apply. And we've talked internally about ensuring that we provide some sort of cost estimates up front, so folks understand what's going to be needed from a time and cost perspective to do whatever it is that needs to be done, whether it's a reconfiguration or installing additional infrastructure capacity, whatever the request is, that's not related to the actual VES itself.
Sure. And I think there was some question as to whether or not CenturyLink looked at that project management charge that's actually in the tariff as an ongoing, or if that was meant to be specifically for implementation of the ESInet.
Well, I think it is a little vague in the language to the tariff, but it doesn't seem unreasonable that would just be an ongoing project management labor rate for doing whatever the requested work is that's outside of the service itself.
And before I turn it over, because I know there are people on here who have other questions about the project management charges, but is it something that CenturyLink's considering and filing into the future tariff amendment that was presented yesterday just for ease of proceedings, or would you be looking at doing a different proceeding or tariff filing amendment separate from the new service?
What would the change be? Just kind of making the language clear you're talking about as a more universal application of that?
Yeah, I mean,
we're looking
if
at an entirely different structure.
no, if CenturyLink looks at that project management charge that's already in the tariff as an ongoing, then I think just clarifying that to make it more applicable going forward and not specifically to ESInet implementation.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. We could do that. Whatever folks think would be the right and appropriate timing of that.
Thanks. And I'll turn it back to Steve because I know that there are other people on this call that have questions about that.
Okay, I'm here. Go ahead.
No, sorry, Steve Silverman's running.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hey, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Thanks, Steve.
All righty. Thank you. See, I'm here to serve. We're here to serve.
So I don't see any hands up. I want to open up the floor for questions on the project management piece that Tim just went over. I know I was absent in the last meeting, but in the meeting prior, there were definitely some comments, concerns, and questions about that, especially as we, in the moment, were comparing some notes during this meeting of different projects that were happening in that moment. So anyone have questions or comments?
I have a comment at Grand Junction.
Yes, Indy, go ahead.
This kind of started with us asking questions as to what we were going to be charged for this switchover on our 911 phone system. And we are still do not have a project manager, do not have contact with a project manager, do not have a statement of work, have not been able to sign the contract. And so we are now a month after everybody finding out that we've been fighting it, maybe 6 weeks, and we still have not moved forward. So it's not even that we're going to be charged anymore. Now it's just getting the paperwork and having people reach back out to us. We continue to have meetings and you continue to explain what the charges are for, sure. But I still don't have a project manager and I still don't have any paperwork to sign and I don't have everything that we need. And I'm being told that I need to fill out a statement of work or get the statement of work. We're still not getting anywhere.
Hey, Cindy, this is Steve. So I talked with, I believe it's with Corey. We're going to go ahead, once you all maybe provide Tracy with who the Carbine point of contact is. We've already looped Intrado in and they're ready to go ahead and start work while you all are looking at. I know Jeff has some action items to get this out to you all, but I committed to Corey last week that we on the Lumen side was going to go ahead and get the ball moving on our side. So if you could provide Tracy with who the Carbine project manager is going to be, they can go ahead and start scheduling calls with us and Intrado so we can not get further behind from you all's time frame for deployment.
And this was something you spoke with Corey about last week?
Yes,
Because
ma'am.
we've not heard from Tracy. Corey was not positive that Tracy was going to be our project manager. And I hate taking up the time in this meeting to discuss this. And this is the
Yeah.
only way that we're getting any movement is by me talking about it in these meetings.
Yeah. Yeah. I talked. So if just send Tracy who the Carbine project manager is, and we'll host the initial kickoff call. We'll bring to that call the Intrado team to go ahead and get the process moving while, Winkham is finalizing the required documents. So I committed that to Corey, and we're ready to rock and roll and move on that.
Okay, I'll do that as soon as I'm done with this phone call.
Okay, thank you. And we do apologize, Cindy.
I got a couple hands up, Kimberly.
Thanks, Steve. And this goes back to, I guess, a little bit about what Tim was saying and Jennifer. So my question is more towards Jennifer. What do we do and what steps do we need to take to get an interpretation of how these project management fees can be applied and what they are meant for? Because there is some differing opinions about that in the tariff. So is that something that the PUC would then take to the AG's office to get an opinion on, or what do we do to close that interpretation gap?
Well, I think in my conversations with Tim and Tressa on this, well, actually with Tressa, I haven't talked to Tim about it, but we were looking for clarity on when a project management fee would need to be applied and a uniform project management fee to be in the tariff, because anybody who's implementing call handling equipment, whether it's cloud-based or some other connectivity, you don't have there's no option to connect with anyone else. You have to go through CenturyLink to connect to the ESInet. And so that should be part of the tariff charges. And it should be clear as to when those project management fees would be applied and at what rate they would be applied and what information that a agency can expect to receive when they're being quoted for these project management. Because the other challenge, I mean, I hear Cindy's frustration, but there's also Aurora trying to implement Carbine, Denver's trying to implement Carbine, Broomfield's trying to implement Carbine. And as it was pointed out in the last meeting, Carbine's not the only cloud handling or cloud-based call handling equipment that's going to come up. And so I think there's also questions about it as to, will this apply to any cloud-based handling, call handling equipment, or is this only going to be applied to cloud handling equipment that isn't offered by Intrado or CenturyLink? At the last meeting, we had a conversation about a connection that needs to be made for each cloud handling solution. And those are all questions that ideally would be answered in any tariff amendment when it comes to connecting CPE to the ESInet, because as we talked about earlier this week, a lot of call handling equipment or some call handling equipment will need to be upgraded before we can go into the phase 2 next gen report, 911 report and order FCC. So those are all the questions that I would like to see answered in any tariff amendment that addresses project management and connections of call handling equipment to the ESInet. I know that was long, but I hope that helps.
Kind of. I guess a follow-up question would just be maybe more towards the CenturyLink team, since there is a tariff being discussed with GIS, that this perhaps has an opportunity to be made more clear in the tariff as it's being developed, so we can all know and understand what to expect. To your point, Jennifer, is there's lots of cloud systems, And there's other CPE opportunities. So who's going to get charged? What are they going to get charged? What are those services? So I would like CenturyLink team to consider before they file this next tariff to consider rewriting that section to make it incredibly clear. And I don't know what that does for everybody that's facing that today, because it's unclear. So I guess if they want to challenge that, they would just work directly with PUC staff. Would that be right, Jennifer? Whether it's an informal, formal complaint, or go through that process if they wanted to challenge how those fees are being applied today without that clarity in the tariff.
Yep.
Okay.
And I missed, if you had a question in the very beginning, I had a connection issue with my headset, so I'm sorry about that.
No, you're good. Thanks.
Anything from CenturyLink?
Sure. I wasn't sure if you're going to go to Joe or not. Is there some language that you have that you'd like us to include or consider? I mean, we're wanting this to be acceptable to you all. So I don't want to just come up with language and throw it at the wall and see if it sticks. If you've got something, Kimberly, that you're specifically thinking of, I'd love to see it. Or anybody else.
I don't, Tim, but I'm sure through this committee, we could probably come up with some recommendations to send over to the CenturyLink team. You bet.
Okay. Take it.
Yeah, I'm willing to help with that as well.
Yeah, all right. That sounds good. I will, and I don't mind helping too to help aggregate. So between Kimberly, Jennifer, and myself, we will start a draft and then maybe circulate it to get you guys some ideas. Is that helpful, Tim?
100%.
Okay. All right. More hands are up. Joe.
Just want to say, back when we negotiated the ESInet tariff, we said we wanted an ESInet users group. I think that's in the settlement agreement. But one of the purposes was to have a forum for people who are having difficulties with a project or issues with CenturyLink to be able to bring them up and have them discussed. Other people might be having similar problems. That helps get the weight of the community behind getting a solution that somebody needs. And so no one should be reticent about taking some time in these meetings about individual issues where they're not getting resolution. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe. On that note, is there, I wasn't part of that process, so could anybody speak to from CenturyLink on I mean, I look at it as a kind of a ticketing system, but a formal process to submit, to Joe's point?
Steve, if I could jump in.
Yeah, please.
Joe's right. This is the correct forum to bring up those issues. And I think, we have the issues tracker that Tracy already maintains. So I think we've got a process that is working fairly well to make sure that we're on top of issues that are brought up in this meeting, unless you really feel the need for another one. I'm not sure I see that need.
I personally don't. I was just asking the question because I'm not familiar with the documents that Joe is referencing. So does anybody have any problem with the way it's currently being done today? Nothing heard. Andrew.
There's the mute button. To Kimberly's earlier point, so I had pushed Jim Carlson to get with, or rather, I had pushed one of the VPs at Carbine to get with Jim and the CenturyLink team, and I have emails from Jim committing to the interconnection that we discussed, this kind of eventual end state that needs to happen anyway. So just, but I'm not sure there was anybody else from the task force of the users group that was included on any of that. So I just wanted to provide that update that they are moving forward, at least Carbine and CenturyLink, on setting that up. However, it did come with the caveat that changes would need to be made to the to the tariff. Now, in the quote that we got for the project management and everything else, there is a line item for a non-recurring charge. I would submit and would love to be a part of those additional conversations, Steve Silverman, that the interconnection. Well, let me actually pose the question to the CenturyLink team. The interconnection is basically a one-time cost to establish, correct? Or do you anticipate monthly recurring charges for that interconnection?
Hey, Andrew, this is Steve Deloach, and I was on the call with the Carbine team, and they discussed 3 design for their cloud call handling. One of them was the hairpin, which is in place today. The second one was still a hairpin, but they were going to put their SBC to make the configuration on their side simpler as opposed to making that on the firewall. And then the third design was building connectivity directly from their own ramp locations to a Lumen SBC. In that offering, that is going to require, once we get to that point, that's going to be an NRC to set that all up and do the configuration. And then there would be a monthly recurring fee for the network transport, because you got to have network transport for that direct connection that they're talking about. And that's going to be an MRC that somebody has to cover, whether it's a Carbine or the state of Colorado via tariff amendment. But that one will require a MRC and an NRC. And the 2 options that they talked about earlier, those just require the NRC because we're reusing all of the existing infrastructure, and it's just a configuration changes as well as some project program management.
Gotcha. And
Okay.
so was there because it sounds like the 3 recommendations all came from Carbine. Did CenturyLink have a kind of counter suggestion to any of those? Or do you all generally agree that one of those 3 options is the best path forward?
Well, yeah, so as an industry standard, Andrew, the simplest and the cleanest way would be the direct connectivity, right? The on-ramp locations. And then that would be sufficient for anybody, anywhere that had Carbine in any state that wanted to interface to a Lumen 891 infrastructure. So that, I think, from a technology perspective, is the most direct, but it creates, as I mentioned, as we talk to Carbine, it creates some other issues that has to be addressed around outage reporting, how you troubleshoot, so we don't put the customer in the middle of, we delivered the call to your own ramp location and the customer isn't getting in the 911 calls. So is it a network infrastructure issue? Is it a cloud call handling issue? So there's a lot of other things that have to be worked out to make sure that we don't create a poor customer experience. What we will tell you is the industry standard is for the cloud call handling vendors to provide this network interface for a direct connectivity. But if you go back, and Tim Kunkman and I had this conversation, if you look at the current tariff for Colorado, it specifies that the BESP has to deliver the call to a certain location. There needs to be some amendments to that tariff, which Lumen is definitely amenable to doing that. So we're not saying we can't do it. We just got to work through that piece of the tariff changes. And then, because once you accommodate for carbine, then you got to make sure you're also being able to accommodate for the Motorola, Vesta Nexus of the world, the Atos, and anybody else that wants to come in to the state to sell cloud call handling. Does that answer your question, Andrew?
It does. I
Okay.
kind of wanted to get a feel for what we were
Yeah.
looking at, regardless of platform, right? I think everybody on this call is agreed that we will build this right. And so, dang it, sorry, I think I just got disconnected.
No, we can hear you.
There we go. My headset disconnected. So I think we want to build this right. So that's why I wanted to just kind of see, all right, can we expect, anyway, and we can talk through this in those follow-on conversations about how to develop this.
Absolutely.
So yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And what I want to leave everybody with is this. The one thing I want to make sure of is that we do it right, and we don't create an environment where we are providing a poor customer experience, right? Not saying we are. So we know today the couple of customers that have deployed via the hairpin, there's not been any issues from a customer experience perspective. We do know in the industry, some of the cloud call handling vendors have deployed a direct interface. I'm not hearing of any issue. So we just want to make sure that when we do it for our customers in Colorado, that we make sure that our customers and your customers are getting a great customer experience with the new design. And the last thing I said, just keep in mind when we did this tariff, 6 or 7 years ago, there was no mention of anything cloud. So we are now having to evolve from where we were 6 or 7 years ago to what the industry is asking for today.
All right, did that answer, Andrew, everything you needed to, or any questions from anyone else, even if it's not carbine related? It sounds like they're attempting for an agnostic approach, regardless of vendor.
The only other thing that I would love an answer to, and I don't want to take up too much more time in this meeting, so maybe there's a better avenue for this, but those of us that have received those quotes for project management, I think Jennifer mentioned there's a real shortage of an explanation as to what we're being charged for. It's pretty vague. And there's things like Lumen's project management hours are double the technical and actual work being done by Intrado. So it just seems wonky to me. So again, don't want to take up more time here if there's not an appetite to really get into the weeds on that, but would appreciate some additional detail.
Hey, Andrew, that's a great question. So we have prepared a document that outlines all of the charges and the line items of what those charges mean. And we'd be more than happy to have a call with you to review. And I know we have also went back and modified the Lumen program or project management hours. I don't know if you've got an updated quote yet, to kind of reflect the current tariff, what's in there as a guideline for what we can charge for project management for non-traditional services. So if you haven't received an updated
I have not.
Okay, we can get you one, because what we've seen is we have adjusted the Lumen project management hours to coincide with what's in the tariff based on how many hours you can charge per concurrent call session. So we can get you that updated quote, and then we can also provide you documentation on what the project management responsibilities are for Lumen versus the stuff that Intrado's got to be doing.
Okay.
All right.
And I will audaciously speak for Aurora and maybe Grand Junction that they would probably love to review that document as well.
Okay. So how about we do this? Because we went through the same exercise with Grand Junction. Winkelman, let's get a call scheduled with the two PSAPs, and let's review their quotes. The same thing we did at Grand Junction, And the other thing that we've said, Andrew, is on these hours, they're just a budgetary number. And in the agreement, we clearly state that we will only charge for the actual hour. So if we budget from an Intrado side, it's, they say 100 hours, and we start the process, it only takes 50, we'll only bill for 50. And the same for the Lumen project manager. If we quote 40 hours and we only bill for only use 20, then we only bill for 20. And I think we've updated the language in the Grand Junction contract to accommodate that new philosophy.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
All right. So Jeff, can you kind of, let's get a call schedule with the two PCAPs and let's kind of walk through, give them the updated quotes and walk through the new pricing concept and an explanation of what the charges are. And like I said, these are just high level budgetary numbers. We definitely think it shouldn't take as long as what it took for the first one, but you just never know what you're going to run into.
Right. No, I can go ahead and do that. And
Okay.
Andrew, I had sent over the updated quote that Steve's talking about. I sent it to the group for you guys, and which actually prompted the conversation we had with the contract administration, which helped. So I'll go ahead and get those. I'll send out an email to both parties and see what we can do to get it coordinated as quick as possible.
Thank you.
All right, Andrew, to one of your questions, I don't think going into detail on these things is a bad thing. For a lot of us, understanding which you're going through and for future reference for when we change CPEs over, this is really valuable. So don't feel like you're getting too far into the weeds.
Appreciate it.
There was one other hand up besides Jeff's, and then it went down and the person moved. I can't remember what name it was. Does anybody else have anything additional?
That was Brian Kelly.
Brian,
Hey,
okay.
folks. Yeah, Brian Kelly with Converge One. Thank you for just the moment here. You guys kind of were talking through there with Steve and Andrew some of my questions. I would just add that I have several other partners or 911 centers in the area that are looking to get approval for these projects, and obviously the Lumen PM charges are a line item to that total cost that they need to present to their boards for approval. So we have several projects that are kind of being held up until we get this worked out. So Jeff, this is again, Brian Kelly with C1. I was going to write you an email maybe, and we can include some other 911 centers in that discussion along with Denver and Aurora, whether we do those independently or not. But there's some immediate needs from some folks to get this cleared up so that they can get their total cost for the projects outlined and therefore carry them forward, to the board for approval.
Brian, go ahead and send me that email, because I think for right now, we want to move forward to get Denver, Aurora, and Grand Junction underway to make sure we can get that done, but then we can address the rest of them as well.
Understood. I'll send it along. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anything additional before we move on to the issues tracker? Nothing heard. Tracy.
Hey, guys. Do you have that available to share? Oh, there we go. Perfect. You read my mind by making it bigger. All right, guys. I will go through this tracker, and we have several Lumen folks still on the phone that can hopefully speak to any updates that I wasn't able to get yet. The first one we added this last month was Adams County trying to move from their DS3, and I have talked a little bit with Jeff on this one. He was coordinating with Jim Carlson. Jeff, I believe our goal was to complete this by the end of August, but do you have an update on that?
I do not. I'll have a better idea after the call that we have scheduled with them later today.
Okay, so there's something later today.
Yes, we've got a call as far as the configuration between their IT team and ours. And that will give me a better idea. Our goal is still to have this completed by the end of the month, but I'll have a better idea if that's feasible or not by then.
Okay. I don't think I'm on that call, which is 100% fine. If you could just shoot me an email, I will update this for the next time it's sent out.
For sure.
The next one I think came in from Jennifer. There was a request to add an issue around calls dropping at the 11-minute mark. I haven't been a part of any of these conversations, so I'm not 100% sure where we are at with Wesco and or my technical folks.
This is Jennifer. I can pull up my notes on this, but I also know that Alex and Matt are on the call and can probably provide a little bit of background while I pull up what I have.
Okay, that would be helpful. Just the only information I have is your request to put it on the tracker.
And Amber from Wesco as well. But Alex, if you would like to start.
Yeah, as far as I know, I was waiting to hear back from some of the dispatch staff that was looking into some calls that we dug up to try to identify if there was a patterning that could be found, but I have also not heard back on that.
Do you guys have anybody at Lumen that you were like, other than sending the issue to me for the tracker, was there anyone else at Lumen involved in the issue?
Not yet. My understanding was the dispatch center was going to do some research before they were going to start a ticket with Lumen. That way there was a little bit of data to provide to help in their investigation. Okay. So I'm not sure who initiated it.
Alex, do we not have a trouble ticket for this?
I am not aware of one. I can look in Wesco's tracker to see if they have started one, but
okay.
I do not know of one.
So generally what we've been hearing in sort of a generalized paraphrasing is that to the dispatcher, it sounds or feels like the call's dropping at the 11-minute mark. Alex spent some time looking into it, talking with the crew, and we've determined that it may be possible that the call is not actually being disconnected, but the audio is being completely dropped as if it were disconnected.
This is Kevin Newton. Just have you traced what the source? I mean, as far as zero consistency, I have seen this before it was even next gen.
Mm-hmm.
On regular CAMA when it was E911. I have seen this before when I was tech support.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just wondering if you're finding any, is it cell phones? Is it a specific carrier? Have you gotten that far yet?
We've gotten a little bit into it. Amber says her mic is not working in the call this morning, so she's relaying to me that Wesco may have discovered it. It might have been related to another issue. And this is where Alex and I started thinking, okay, so if it's an audio issue and not the call necessarily dropping, then it could be anywhere in the chain from the caller to the handset at dispatch, right? Or the headset. She's indicating Brian may have found it was due to some type of busy ring where it was not ringing into our primary PSAP facility, but it would ring into the secondary PSAP facility.
Hey, this is Rob Greer with the City of Aurora. We actually had this same issue several weeks back, and we opened a ticket with the Entrado NOC, which they in turn opened a ticket with their VNS. And they put some kind of patch in. I don't know exactly what they did, but they did fix our issue because we had that 11-minute drop. Yeah, the call wasn't dropping. It was just the audio would stop sending.
Yeah.
To the PSAP. But yeah, we opened a ticket with Entrado NOC and the VNS, and they're the ones that end up fixing it.
Thank you for that. That's very helpful. Amber is relaying to me through DMs that it's a very similar situation. So Tracy, I think maybe what we need to do is just leave this in the tracker for one more round, and we'll just confirm with our local CenturyLink tech and give it a couple more weeks to soak to see if this is being resolved.
That's fine. Perfect.
And thank you, Aurora, for jumping in. I knew that it was either Aurora or Denver that was having this same issue, and that's why I asked for it to be added to the tracker. So appreciate you jumping in and providing that context.
You're welcome.
Do you have a ticket number or something, Aurora, I'm curious where this was fixed? How it was fixed?
Yeah, I do have the ticket number. Let me grab it and I'll get back to you.
If you can, I'm going to keep Tracy in the middle here. So if you can send it to Tracy.
Okay, I'll do that.
Thank you.
Thinking we did have a ticket number for our CenturyLink tech to work on this. We'll try to round that up as well.
Yeah, I can provide that. I did find it. It looks like there was one open and then it was then canceled. So I'm not sure if our local tech initiated that cancel or what, but I will send that over as well.
Thanks, Alex.
All right. Thank you guys for that. I will get this updated with what we talked about, just so our notes are clear in one spot, and we'll see where we're at in September. State line transfers. This has been on here for a long, long time. I have one more PSAP that I need the star codes to be loaded into their CPE. That is not Lumen equipment, so we're not able to do it for them. So as soon as that's done, we will close the project and have the ability to transfer 911 calls between Colorado and Nebraska. And we will move on to the second state, and I have not been told what that is yet. But we will be working on, all of them down the road. I know that Motorola is anxious to get something going on the southern part of the state, and I know there's been some conversation with Kansas, which I believe is tied to AT&T. So I'm not sure which state will be next, but we are almost done with the Colorado-Nebraska border. Statewide ECATs, we are moving forward. I know we've had, I think 12 or 13 that we've been still trying to work with. Intrado and myself have been reaching out. We now have 3 PSAPs that are actively engaged. We're working with Bent, Sterling, and Trinidad. Just trying to make sure that we help them get the paperwork filled out for Intrado. And then, next step is to get the RDDMs out there, and do the data spill, get them their training. I would love to have these 3 completed this month. So that's what we're working on. And we'll continue to move forward with the rest of the folks as well. The circuit move for LIDA, we are leaving this on here. Jeff is having some conversations now, a little bit of confusion as to when the circuit was activated. So I know that there's side conversations taking place on that right now to find out where the communication breakdown was and what we're going to do moving forward. Network improvement project. So again, this is where Sharon was just entering the circuit orders. There are a few that she needs to redo just for technical reasons. It's not changing any of the rollout dates or the install dates or anything, but internally some of the paperwork had to be redone. So she's continuing to work on that one. We had put on here the request to have a meeting to talk about the FCC phase 1.
Tracy, so sorry, this is Jennifer. Could I just go back to the network performance project real quick?
Yeah.
I did receive a report that some of the PSAPs are still being contacted by a couple of contractors or subcontractors without any kind of notification from CenturyLink that the work's going to be taking place. And so I just want to reiterate the request that in the interest of everyone's time, it would be really helpful if CenturyLink could let the PSAPs know which subcontractor they should be expecting contact from and what they'll be doing. I know you sent out the Excel spreadsheet, which is great, but it's hard to hit everybody in the state with all this information that we've got going on. And so phone calls to the PSAP to say, hey, Comcast or GTT or whoever is going to be contacting you. This is what they're doing. And we don't have a specific date, but a date range would be helpful. And I see that Kimberly's got her hand up.
Yeah, I almost wonder if the contact shouldn't be with these third parties to CenturyLink, and CenturyLink is the agency that's coordinating with us, because we are also having problems, and our most recent problem is with Estes Park and coordinating access. This third party wants access into your telco rooms, and we can't access that even if it's at town hall, because those are your secure rooms and they need to be able to see your demarcation. So we can of course give them access into the PSAP and do all of that, but I just feel like this coordination almost needs to happen between the carrier that you're contracting with and CenturyLink, and then CenturyLink is coordinating with us as it pertains to a site need.
Right. No, I understand. I understand where we're coming from. I think here, because this came up before, there is a process, and if you guys want to send me specific PSAPs that are not being notified, I can dig into it deeper, but I'm copied on a lot of the emails, and I understand a phone call is preferred, but the Lumen process right now is via email. There is an email that is going out notifying each location when a Lumen tech is coming out. And there's a second email that goes out for the third party contractor to come out. It's not a phone call. It is an email, and it does give a date and time range as to when they're going to be on site. Those emails are going directly to the two contacts that were given to Sharon when the orders were entered. It was required that we provided two contacts at each PSAP so that the information could flow through those people. If they're not going to the correct people, then we need to get that updated. But the ones I've investigated in the past, there is communication and notification, but it is via email. And I don't know, I mean, I know who I can throw the request up to, but I don't have the ability to, require phone calls to be sent out. That's a completely different group. We can make the request, and I can work with Jeff and Steve to do so. But I do know that emails are being sent to the contacts that were provided to Lumen when we started the project.
So Tracy, my point really isn't so much about the contact. I'm just wondering about coordinating, the carriers coordinating with CenturyLink. CenturyLink is coordinating with us because it feels like a vendor meet needs to be happening at the PSAP between CenturyLink and your contracted carrier, so CenturyLink can explain their equipment, so CenturyLink can escort them into any secure telco rooms that you may have with your equipment. And of course, the PSAP, we want to be there to give access into the PSAP and the facility as well. But that's the piece I'm talking about. Not so much saying, hey, the emails are bad. It's just I'm finding a gap here because we need CenturyLink to also be on site and to coordinate and be there to then let this third party into your secure area. Does that make sense?
CenturyLink needs to be on site when the third party circuit vendor is on site.
In my experience, that's what's needed for at least one of my PSAPs, because they need access into your secure telco room for where your equipment is, where the demarcation is. And we don't have access into there. So I'm just bringing up that this is a CenturyLink project.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if CenturyLink shouldn't be coordinating with your third party vendor to do a vendor meet on site if they need you there. And then you guys are coordinating directly with the PSAPs. I think you're on the email of the problem that we're having at Estes Park, where it shows that they need access into your secure telco rooms.
Yep, I am. I definitely am. And, being honest, I don't know how that process works because that team is completely outside of myself or Jeff, but I can certainly follow up and see how we can communicate better if there is going to be a need for a Lumen tech to be on site. I can facilitate how we make that happen. I just don't know right off the bat how that happens unless somebody else on the phone call for Lumen knows. I understand the ask. I'm not sure how to make it happen.
Anyone else from Lumen that can help answer that? We got 3 hands up too.
Yep. Hey, Tracy, this is Steve. So I think it's a valid concern because it delays us getting the circuit installed when people are having to make multiple trips.
Mhm.
So let's just have an internal call to figure out who all we need to engage. So when the third party vendor goes out on site, that at a minimum, our technicians have done some preliminary work to make sure, hey, if they need to terminate the circuit into a secure location, that we're there. A lot of times what happens, everybody, is if it's an existing building, it has an existing telco room, and that third party vendor will bring their circuit into that room, and they'll test the connectivity of the last mile piece to say, hey, from our perspective, everything looks good up into the equipment room. And then once the third party vendor has sent us a notification that they've installed that piece, then the Lumen technician will come out and install any Lumen required gear and then do that end-to-end connectivity testing. So a lot of times when a third party vendor is there, they're only activating their piece of it, and our folks on the Lumen side, we've got to do something to make that circuit whole end to end once we know that the last mile provider has done something. So maybe that's where the miss is, but I think we should at least have awareness and make our technicians aware that, hey, if we know this site and the equipment room is secured, that we don't have the third party vendor coming out there and can't get in there. So Tracy, let's me and you huddle up and we'll get the vendor access group involved to see if there's something we can do to alleviate this in the future.
I think I can add that there's impacts to the staff too, from what Kimberly's saying. If you have multiple trips out there with different vendors to do things in a different cadence, we have to schedule our own staff to be able to escort them. So the more efficiency, the better.
Absolutely.
All right, Kimberly, did that hit everything that you were asking?
Yes, thanks, Steve.
Mhm.
Both Steves.
Joe.
So on this network improvement plan status, the network improvement plan also included a generator project. It included an inter-office diversity project, well, several inter-office diversity projects to benefit 12 PSAPs. I don't recall offhand if it included the migration of the ESInet from SONET to Ethernet, or that was a separate project. But it'd be good if you included on your status update all of the projects under the improvement plan.
Hey, Joe, this is Jennifer, and I'm going to jump in the interest of keeping us on track for this meeting. CenturyLink is required to file quarterly reports on that, and they've just filed their most recent one in the network improvement plan proceeding. So if we could direct you to that for those updates and keep this meeting on track, I think that would be helpful.
I was going to ask them to give a update now. Just I thought they should include it on their issue tracker, since there's more to the improvement project than just the last mile diversity.
I will, for this meeting's sake and time's sake, we'll reference the report that was just filed. Joe, do you have anything else pertaining to the issue tracker? All right, nothing heard. Chris Stewart.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So a little bit more on this last mile diversity stuff. I agree with what Kimberly brought up, and the Delta County is one of the counties where we were just getting, I got some generic emails with like, the vendor will be contacting you. The install dates are sometime in October. And then we just started getting phone calls from vendors saying, hey, we're showing up and we need to install stuff in your secure room. You need to give us access. We didn't know who these people are. One of them didn't contact me as a designated representative for the PSAP. They contacted the county IT director, who had no idea what it was. And of course, we weren't going to give them access to secure portions of our building without justification. And then another concern is they don't have any idea what they're doing. I'm having to explain to them that this is probably related to last mile diversity. They don't know anything about the 911 network, where equipment needs to go, the path to get into the building, what Lumen's priority and preferences for that. And one of the vendors is talking about running the exact same path on the exact same poles as Lumen. So is there still supposed to be true diversity and they're supposed to have a different route than CenturyLink's fiber coming into our PSAP, or is it all supposed to be on the same pole? That's one of the questions, because as we're walking them through, saying this is where you need to install stuff, is it supposed to be diverse and coming in a different way than what CenturyLink already has?
Yeah, this is Steve. I'll try to answer that one. So in the network improvement plan, it was around circuit or last mile diversity. The one thing that when we did start working on the plan, the last mile providers don't share their route maps or route paths with us. So if one circuit is Lumen and one circuit is vendor A, there may only be one common access to get into that building. So if we have situations where we know there's multiple paths into the building, we can try to get ahead of those and have a conversation with the vendor to say, hey, can you make sure that you're not using the north entrance but the south entrance? But the network improvement plan, it only address last mile diversity, and path diversity is a whole different scenario when you're designing a network. And the one thing from a Lumen perspective or any vendor, you cannot guarantee any path diversity unless both of those circuits are from the same vendor. So that's one of the reasons why we did the last mile diversity piece, because if we went back with 2 Lumen circuits, it doesn't address having diverse last mile providers.
Yeah, let me add to that. It's our hope and intention to diversify that last mile as best we can. As Steve said, there are some situations where we may find that at the building point, we might have some shared infrastructure. We're trying to avoid it if it's possible to do that. One part of the whole project with using another carrier was to help provide some carrier diversity that may not, or excuse me, that would provide some diversity, even if it's sharing some last mile facilities or infrastructure, but deeper or further out in the network. Lumen may have had an issue that isn't affecting necessarily the infrastructure at the PSAP location, but rather having a network problem that hopefully the other carrier may not be having that same issue. So that's why we pushed for not just having Lumen build two circuits or two paths, but to have another carrier do it where we could get some interest, where folks would give us some bids and where we could make that accommodation. So the short answer is yes, we're trying to make it be physically diverse, geographically diverse, if you will, when we can. We are, as you've mentioned, running into some issues where there might be some shared infrastructure at some point. To the extent that we can resolve that, we're going to make every attempt to do that and work with the other carrier if there are other alternatives. So if there's things that you all know of at your locations or near your locations where there might be some other alternative pathways, we're open to hearing all those.
Okay, and is it up to the PSAP to direct if there are overhead installations, if they need to be bored into the building, or is that they're just supposed to collect information, return that to Lumen, and then your team will decide on what's the most cost-effective way. That they're asking me these questions, and I don't know how to respond to them of what the preference is.
Yeah, well, I think when you're getting those kind of questions, let's get us involved so that we can have that conversation with you and with the other provider as well. See what options there might be.
All right. Well, the installation engineers that they're sending out just say we got a piece of paper from Lumen saying we need to come do a site walk. We have no idea what this is for. So I'm just relaying that that's how much information is getting relayed.
Okay, appreciate that.
I have a quick follow-up question on that. When Comcast came as your sub to our PSAP, the tech advised that we would be getting a report, and we haven't received anything. Does each entity get a report from the sub, or is that going to you guys? And it was just misspoke on the tech's perspective.
Yeah, I'll take that one. I think there was a misspeak on the text perspective. So I don't know what type of report they would be providing on the circuit design. If anything, I mean, they should be communicating that to Lumen. But I've not seen in the past, these third-party vendors don't provide anything other than what they may be insinuating is the report is that they came out, they installed the circuit, they tested the connectivity up to the demarc point on their side and all passed. And they do provide that to Lumen so that that triggers our folks to start the provisioning, finishing the provisioning on that circuit by Lumen. So I've never seen us provide a customer with a report from that last mile provider. So not sure what that is.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. More hands are up. Jennifer.
Not to muddy the waters, but I was copied on a email back to one of the PSAPs where the third-party vendor had completed their work. I wouldn't call it a report, but it was an email that said this is now connected and you'll be receiving charges, which caused different challenges in communication. But maybe that's what the tech was referring to.
Yeah, that
probably.
could be. That could be. I will say some of the wording on those canned messages can definitely raise the eyebrows when it comes to costs. We got clarification on our specific one, but I think it's good to know that ask questions if you're not sure what they mean and especially when it comes to the charging and when we'll be charged.
And as a reminder, there's no additional charges that are coming. You guys, all the tariff charges that are going to happen are already in place.
Yeah, I was going to add to that. So anything that you all get pertaining to charges, you can just disregard it because there's not going to be any incremental charges other than what's been filed by the tariff. And a lot of times, like Steve said, these are canned messages that they send out to everybody. And normally what they're trying to say in a normal environment is when we install our piece that they're going to start billing Lumen, not you, the customer, because you bought that circuit from Lumen. So just some canned messages, but they're not applicable to the state of Colorado.
Yeah, if I can offer some suggestion to CenturyLink is to update your canned messages because it surely did cause some questions and a little, not panic, but fear about.
Right.
So I think that could be a better delivery of communication.
Absolutely.
Joe Benkert.
Yeah, I heard a comment about looping CenturyLink in when technicians are wanting to know where to install the cable or something. And do the PSAPs have information now about who they would contact at CenturyLink about that, who the point person would be? And does CenturyLink provide status reports like when they get a report that the third-party facility has been put in place?
We were told at a previous meeting to go to Tracy.
Yes.
Well, yes and no, guys, because if someone shows up on site, Steve, I'm not necessarily available when they show up.
No,
After the fact, yes.
Yeah, I thought they were talking about the previous question about who to contact at Lumen So Tracy Dillo is the state of Colorado single point of contact. So anything that you don't know who to go to, I think Trace would be a good conduit to start, and she can get it headed appointed to the person that owns it.
And that is true. That would be for 911 and non-911. I thought they were asking for if we had someone available at the time that this third party vendor showed up at Boulder Sheriff's Department, who they would call. And I mean, if it's during the day and I'm here, fantastic.
Yeah.
But sometimes they don't show up, at a normal time, or if they're there on a weekend or something. I don't think we have, I don't know
Yeah.
if we necessarily have someone that would be available, 24/7.
Well, let me say this, and maybe this is how we, Tracy, do you get copied on the emails when the vendor is saying they plan to have somebody out there to do the install from the third party?
That goes through Sharon and Megan. I mean, I get forwarded the email if there's a problem when they've come on site, but that's a different group. I can certainly ask to be added to that, Steve, and that way I would know when it's done, if that's
Yeah,
helpful.
and all I'm thinking about is if we get the emails that at a minimum we can forward the email on to the SR, which is the SR is the regional service operations manager. He's the person that manages the Lumen technical resources.
Okay.
Just as an FYI, so they can be on the lookout, or so I just think it's just an awareness on their part as well. So if we get those, that maybe we trace it, I'm pretty sure there's only one or maybe a couple of SROs in the state, and maybe we can just give them that for awareness. I don't think these third party vendors are coming out on the weekends or after hours to do anything. So I think normally their request is, for 8 to 5 Monday through Friday.
Yeah, I think they give a time frame on the email. So
Yeah.
let me see if I can get added to those, and that way we at least have the information.
Right.
And we
And
can
then,
go from there.
right. And we can forward it on to the regional operations manager who manages the technicians, just as an awareness on their part. And that we just keep everybody in the loop.
Would that also address the issue Kimberly raised where these techs show up and they need to get into the PSAP equipment room and also into the CenturyLink CO, and so it can be coordinated?
Yeah, I think so, because I think what we can do, Tracy, is if it's a PSAP that the site is maintained by Lumen for the CPE, then I think, we should make those local technicians aware of what's going on, and they could say, hey, that facility has a secured room and we need to make sure we're there. So I think there's something we can do on our side. If we are made aware, Tracy, that we could just reach out and shoot an email to the technicians to just make them aware of what's going on. If it's a Lumen maintained site. Now, I will say this, if it's a non-Lumen maintained site, then it truly becomes the responsibility of the PSAP to notify their CPE vendor to go in there and unlock that room.
Hey, Steve, I don't mean to interrupt, but I think you guys, through Jeff Winkleman a while back, sent a survey. Everybody completed that survey. I would encourage CenturyLink to go back to that survey to look at the nuances that each PSAP was supposed to put in there when it comes to access and contact information for both the vendor and CenturyLink.
Fair statement, Steve. So Tracy, let's get that look and let's get that document and look through it to see if there's any anomalies, and make sure we identify those and get them addressed up front.
Okay.
All right. For sake of time, we got 5 minutes left. I want to be conscious of everybody's time, and we're not through the issue tracker or the agenda. So Tracy, back to you on the issue tracker.
Yeah, we'll go through this real quick. And guys, I have to present again at 11:30 on another call, so I'm going to try to hurry. If you have questions afterwards, just shoot me an email. As far as the phase 1 Lumen request to have a meeting, we did have this. I'm going to add it to the project tracker to move forward. We're going to give you guys updates on the FCC phase 1, phase 2, and there was one other report that we need to supply to you guys as well. It's down below. I'm going to restructure this a little bit so we have everything together. As far as the dialable numbers and the calls with no usable alley, I know that Andrew is still working with Wesco and others on that. I don't know if he's still on the bridge, but I think the communication is continuing. If there's anything specific on that one.
Jeff,
yep.
We had a meeting with Wesco last week. There was just one last thing on that particular issue. Jeff and I are hunting down, and we had to go to a couple different groups, not the one we thought. So we're still waiting for a reply. So yeah, one last thing, and that should be taken care of.
Thanks, Andrew.
And just to chime in here, Alex out of Wesco for Andrew. I sent new examples of the calls with no usable alley after the supposed fix. So I haven't got a response. I'm not sure if your team's still looking into that again.
Yeah, I'll get with David and make sure that he takes a look at that and responds.
Thank you.
Cool. Lines 11 and 12, we hit on at the beginning of this meeting. That was Tim sharing the tariff expectations, and we got the call closed from Rich and Kevin. So I don't think there's anything else to update on that one. As far as Logan County, I'm just an observer on this. It's going through our technical team, but there are project calls, and we are working with Logan County on this move. Steve, I can't see if there's anything below line item 13 on the screen, but I think there might be.
Jennifer, can you scroll? There you go. Thanks.
There you go. And that's what I was talking about. So lines 14, 15, and 16, I just added those last night based on our phone call on Monday. I have made the commitment to this group that I'll work with Steve Deloach and the rest of the team so that we're providing an update as far as BSP roles, responsibilities, what we've done, what we're doing next for both phase 1 and phase 2. And that line 16 is what I touched on. I'm going to work with Tim internally just to update the LPG PSAP list. We have one from last year, but I believe on the call Monday, somebody said that it wasn't accurate and that it may have changed. So I'm going to be working with my team to get an updated 2025 list for you guys. That might be ongoing, and as I understand it, it's not something we need to have today, but we definitely need it as we approach that phase 2. Is that safe to say?
So that some PSAPs will need an LPG for phase 2 that don't have them now for phase 1.
Correct.
Anything else, Tracy?
No, really the bottom 3 are just kind of FYI. We have different move projects taking place. Again, I'm part of some of those and I'm not, but we're just, we agreed to keep everything in one place. So these are just Weld County, Den 911 and Grand Junction are having some type of migration or physical move. So we'll track those on here. But I don't have anything else for the tracker specifically.
Okay. We only have 1 minute left. I've got star code discussion, ECATS issue from Andrew as topics in addition to the performance reports from a importance of prioritization.
I defer.
Jennifer.
I'll defer my star code discussion to next week, and I will just see if Andrew wants to highlight the ECATS issue that he's got going on in Denver or not.
Right, this Andrew. Sorry. I don't have much of an update. So essentially, we had 2 issues that we discovered concurrently. One, that our ECATS data differs from the IUP data that Jennifer is able to pull. So there is still a question as to why those numbers are different, and the numbers of, for example, incoming call volume differ month over month, anywhere from like 20 or 30 calls to hundreds of calls. So we're still digging into that, trying to figure out what's going on there. The additional issue was that what we found, and anecdotally, some of the other
PSAPs in the metro area reported something similar, is that when we migrated from our contract with ECATS, separate from the ESInet, to the ESInet based ECATS, after we added that to the tariff, our call volume dropped significantly as far as what ECATS was reporting. So the suspicion from the ECATS team is that there is a setting or a threshold issue somewhere within the application that is leading to a very different version of numbers being reported, but both of those happen concurrently. So for anybody else on this call who had ECATS prior to it being added to the tariff and have made that switch, you might want to take a look at your numbers and see if you're experiencing a similar thing. Really, the only update I have as far as that goes is that the ECATS team had sent a new device to us. We're waiting for that to arrive. And so my technical team are working with them. But that's pretty much what I have.
Okay. Thanks, Andrew. Tracy, was there anything glaring in the system performance reports?
So, hold on, let me put my other call on mute. There is one issue on jitter, and it took place on July 30th. I do not have an update because I just submitted a ticket to my NOC last night to look into that. So I will plan on updating that next meeting. Again, it was July, I believe it was the 30th, where you'll see a spike. Everything else was within tariff requirements.
Okay. Thank you, Tracy. Joe, you still have your hand up? Was that residual? Looks like residual. All right, any public comment? Hearing none. Thank you all for all your time this week. It's been productive. We appreciate everything that everybody's putting into this, and we will see you again in the not so distant future.
Thanks, everybody.